PSG get it done in Barcelona. Plus, we end with predictions. Full-time roundup starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. This is another edition of the Full-Time Roundup podcast. Across from me is a face we haven't seen in a long time here. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Danny Brackett, it's great to be on the show. I'm happy to talk some European soccer today. It's been quite the week. Epic matches in the Champions League.
It has. And before we get started, you also talk soccer on a weekly basis at Charlotte Soccer Show. Go ahead and tell the listeners what they can expect at that platform.
Charlotte Soccer Show, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us wherever you hear podcasts. And you can hear an interview this week with Danny Higginbottom, who Premier League fans will know very well. You'll see him now on Premier League mornings. He does some studio work with the NBC crew. He also calls Philadelphia Union matches, and then he'll call MLS matches as well. And he's calling Charlotte and Minnesota this Sunday. So I'm going to talk to him about that. Should be a fun interview with Danny. And I've got some fun highlights to share, some free kick bangers that he had when he was playing for Stoke City.
He was a great player back in his day, and he indeed did it, or could get it done on a rainy night in Stoke for sure. One of my favorite quotes to this day. And then you're wearing the Hot Fly hat. Will we be seeing you at Hot Fly on Sunday?
Yes, that's the other part of the show, right? We'll do content for sure. We like talking about Charlotte FC, but we really like to party at Hot Fly pre-match. We'll do that on Sunday ahead of Minnesota and Charlotte FC at 6:00. It's a Sunday fun day game, the first Sunday game of the season for Charlotte FC. That should be fun. The weather right now not looking great, but good news is, and you've been there, Bracket, the Hot Fly brew house is massive, so a good place to hang out if it is raining on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely pack the poncho as well for the game. No way I'm missing it, but it should be a fun time, and we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Starting just with some games that happened before the Champions League action, which was the biggest game. Chelsea putting up a 6-burger on Everton. No, it was not a touchdown and missing the extra point. This was a soccer game, and Pochettino's men absolutely embarrassed Sean Dyche and Everton. What a disgraceful performance that was. Cole Palmer, 4 goals out of 6. And he just put on an absolute highlight reel with some of the goals he scored, especially that first one with the Meg, the give and go, and then slotting it bottom corner. But I wanted to get your take on this game. Were you expecting this? I know Chelsea had been, up and down, and they usually play their best against good teams and play terrible against the bad teams, but they got it right on Monday.
Was I expecting a 6-0? No. Was I expecting a Chelsea win? Danny, probably, right? It's been a really disappointing season for Chelsea when you think about it. But all of a sudden, here midway through April, looking towards the end of the season, Chelsea gets a massive win. They move up into 9th place and are only 3 points out of 6 right now with a game in hand. So all of a sudden, Mauricio Pochettino, somebody who's preached patience all season, Bracket, is potentially going to have a really strong finish to the season. And when you get a result like this, a 6-0 result, all of a sudden that confidence is just oozing through this club. And when you've got a talisman in Cole Palmer, probably the surprise of the Premier League season as far as just pure stardom is concerned, right? A name that people knew, right? If you knew the game. But as far as the casual that turns on Premier League on the weekends, Cole Palmer kind of shot up out of nowhere this season. And all of a sudden, Chelsea feels like they might have a star for their future and could sneak into Europe.
Yeah, 20 goals, tied with Erling Haaland, especially the fact that he's doing this on a Chelsea team that, for their standards has had a pretty poor season. It's pretty incredible. A lot of them have been from the penalty spot, but at the end of the day, you still got to make it. And so he maintains his 100% record there. But I wanted to hear your take on the penalty. I'm sure you saw it. And we talked about it in the group chat with the players up 4-0, I believe, fighting over who's going to take the penalty. If you're Cole Palmer, are you going to take the penalty there, or are you going to give one of your boys a chance to kind of get on the score sheet as well?
Yeah, it's tough, really, because I'm not in the dressing room. I don't know the relationship between these players, but on the outside looking in, it's certainly awkward. It certainly looks a little bit unprofessional, and I think everybody comes out of this looking bad, right? There's not one person. Even the manager, Mauricio Pochettino, after the match, talked about how it's unacceptable, and what it did is it took away from a fantastic performance, right? You win 6-0, and everything that we just talked about, and here we are talking about some stupid moment in the second half when Chelsea's going to go up 5-0 against an Everton side that forgot to get off the bus. Like, who cares in that situation? I think it's just a reflection of how young this team is. And Mauricio Pochettino, Danny, he's been somebody that likes to coach young players, that likes to have teaching moments. And this probably will be a good opportunity for him to get back in that dressing room and lay into the guys a little bit. Yeah, you won 6-0, but you kind of embarrassed me in the meantime. And I'm sure that Poch isn't somebody that's afraid to talk that way.
Absolutely. And you saw Conor Gallagher, the captain, kind of, deal with the scuffle, if you will. But I think that honestly is up to Pochettino. And there's been, rumors that he never even elected a penalty taker. So it was really up to the players. And we saw how that went, with the whole thing. So I think Pochettino could have probably avoided this if he just, named a penalty taker. And then you don't argue with Cole, you argue with Pochettino there. But I thought that was a very educated take. And, it definitely was a little bit of a shadow after such a, historic victory there. But Everton on the other side, just dreadful, not the performance you want to see, especially, with a big game coming up here in the Premier League, and we'll kind of see what happens. And then, Alfie Gilchrist with his maiden goal for Chelsea, 6-0 up, still celebrated like it was a game winner. Absolutely love that celebration. But yeah, no, that was a great game. And now we got to get to the really fun games. That was the Champions League. They were not as one-sided.
Was it a great game though? Was it a great game? That's my question. I mean, 6-0
if you're a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, if you're a Chelsea fan, that's about it, right? I mean, I think, and if you like goals, you can enjoy that. But as far as a great game is concerned, yeah, let's talk about the ones that came afterwards on Tuesday and Wednesday.
I couldn't agree more. And we'll start with Dortmund hosting Atletico Madrid, down a goal in aggregate. They were hosting at the Signal Iduna Park, and the yellow wall was absolutely rocking. And I was thinking this would be a cagey match. Simeone trying to protect the lead. Terzic doesn't exactly express attacking football, if you will, when it comes to Dortmund. But there was a lot of goals and a lot of terrible defending in this match.
Well, it's exactly what the neutral wants to see, right? Especially at this stage in the Champions League, you want to see goals on a second leg that feels like it needs it, and it's the first of two home German teams that played well. We'll get into Bayern in a minute, but starting with Dortmund, like for me, this Dortmund team is totally a diamond in the rough, right? Dortmund is somebody, a club, Danny, and you know this, they always have talent on that squad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not always does that talent translate to week in, week out in the domestic league. But when you get into this stage of the Champions League, right, when you get into a quarterfinal and you're at home in a second leg, right, that's actually the real opportunity to showcase what kind of talent your club has and go for it. And all credit to Dortmund for going for it. They could have, sat back at home. They could have went into a shell and try to nick one and move on to the next round. But instead, what they decided to do was just go out there and take it to Atletico Madrid and score 4 goals and score 2 back-to-back really nice goals. Sabitzer is somebody that I really like. He's a player that Tottenham considered a move for. I am a Tottenham supporter, always keeping an eye out for players that maybe could have come to the club but didn't end up doing that. Sabitzer is somebody that I thought could have been a really nice signing for Tottenham, and this is why he put it on display, because in a moment like this, Sabitzer is a classy player that can play at the highest level.
Yeah, and Sabitzer has had some interesting stints. He didn't really quite make the cut at Bayern and Manchester United. He just hadn't seen, that potential and that quality, throughout the years. He's kind of touch and go, but the last 2 weeks he's channeled kind of his best form. And I thought he did so alongside Julian Brandt. I thought those two dropped an absolute masterclass in midfield to kind of spur Dortmund to winning this game. And Atletico are known for a lot of things, but I would say they have a fairly solid midfield, especially with Rodrigo de Paul in there. You got the veterans Koke, as well as, some of the young talent that's budding through there, but they completely ran that midfield alongside Emre Can. And that was what I pinpointed as the reason why Dortmund was able to get this win. Usually they're okay defensively. They're great attacking. They have, three studs up there with Sancho, Füllkrug, Haller, as well as Adeyemi. So I thought, they usually lose games through the midfield, and those two stepped up and contributed to, Julian Brandt scored, Sabitzer scored, had an assist as well. So I thought that was really the big reason that they won that game. But I also wanted to question some of the goalkeeping here, especially that first goal with Julian Brandt. I mean, he did get beat on his near post, but it felt like there wasn't much of an angle for Julian Brandt. And Jan Oblak, who's considered one of the best keepers in the world, should do better there. Am I being too harsh?
No, I don't think you're being harsh at all. I think especially at this stage, and I'm going to continue to say this when we're talking about these Champions League games, is because this is when the spotlight like truly shines from a global point of view. Once you get into these quarterfinals, and if you're going to be a world-class keeper, if you're going to take your club into the Champions League semifinals, then you can't make mistakes, right? You have to play perfect games. And Oblak is somebody that I agree. I think he's a really nice player. But when it comes down to the remaining keepers in the Champions League right now, where does he rank? Probably not very high on that list for me. And that kind of puts into perspective that when you get to this level, how competitive it gets, and how when you're under the microscope, especially that position, right? I think playing goalkeeper is probably one of the most difficult positions in any sport in the world, especially in a nervy situation, right? Because you're certainly on an island. You can make a mistake in the midfield. You can give the ball away 2 or 3 different times. But if you do that between the pipes, you're in big time trouble and everybody's talking about you.
No, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with that. I'm just really surprised that Simeone wasn't able to get it done, especially with his experience over Terzic's. But a little news came out afterwards that Terzic will be staying next season. His future, throughout the season has been in doubt. But I think with this win, it's kind of stamped his Dortmund's front office has stamped their voice of approval with him. And I think the keys were bringing Sven Bender in and Nuri Sahin, ex-Dortmund players, as assistant coaches to kind of help with the tactical side. So Edin Terzic, I'm not a fan, but congratulations on the big win here. But I wanted to get to the other Tuesday game, Barcelona, PSG at Barcelona, not the Camp Nou, the one they're currently housed in, as Camp Nou is undergoing renovations. And they came into this game with a 3-2 lead on aggregate, got a big win in Paris. And you could not start a match better than how they started, especially going up with Lamine Yamal absolutely putting the world on blast with how much of a talent he is, crossing it, Rafinha with his third goal against PSG in 2 legs. And the game started, I was thinking, all right, well, that's the tie right there. And then an absolutely crazy situation happened probably 25 minutes later with a red card to Ronald Araujo. Question number 1, is that a red card for you? I just got to know.
Well, is it for you, right? Because I think there's 2 ways to look at this, right? So let me just get your take on it first. Like, do you think that it's a straight red?
It's hard with the double jeopardy because I guess it's technically outside the box, so you're the last man back. I guess so within the rules, maybe, but just interpreting how he fell, I didn't feel like it was enough for a red card, if that makes sense. I feel like Barcola made a meal of it.
I think it's a red card, but I think it's a bad luck red card.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because you mentioned double jeopardy. If it's in the box and you get a yellow for that, and it's a PK, then that feels right. But just on the edge of the box, a straight red impacting the rest of the game, that to me feels harsh. That to me feels like bad luck. But then again, it's silly. It's a cynical foul. It's one of those things where you cannot make decisions like that. You just can't do it. And it continues to pop up. And I'm thinking about recently Manchester United's Delo is somebody who recently has made some crucial, stupid fouls inside the box that have impacted the Premier League team that we were just talking about in that Chelsea match a few weeks ago. Delo makes a really stupid foul inside the box. And to me, that's where I don't get it, right? Where a foul like that is more so between the ears than it is anything else. So when I see that kind of foul, I question what's happening mentally in a moment like this. Are you not aware that this is a Champions League quarterfinal? Are you not aware that it's the 29th minute and the worst possible thing that you could do in this situation is get sent off? And for you to allow that to happen as a player is an awful mistake. It's worse to me than it would be missing a sitter.
Yeah, no, I happen to agree here. And especially the fact that you're up 4-2 on aggregate. You have one of the best keepers between the sticks with Ter Stegen, who's had a great season. And he's been, one of the best keepers for a while now. I rather, try to put him off as much as possible and do my best and pray that Ter Stegen, can make a save here. And we're talking about Ronald Araujo, one of the best central defenders in the entire world here. And he makes a big blunder and it costs his team at the end of the day. And PSG advance, score 4 goals consecutively. Xavi had no answer, but Xavi wasn't even on the pitch for half the match as he got a red card shortly after.
Oh, he knew it was coming. He was happy to get that red card. He was like, you know what, we're fucked. I'm sitting here at home. I'm gonna embarrass our fans. I'm already embarrassed because we had a player sent off before halftime in the biggest match of the season at home in front of our fans, and I know how this is going to go. Anybody that turned the match on in the second half and saw that Barcelona was playing a man down and that Mbappe was cooking, and you knew this thing was going to get turned around pretty quickly, and so did Xavi. So he said, "Hey, I'm going to get out of here, go to take a shower early, and kind of figure out what I'm going to say in the post match press conference."
Yeah, he definitely probably had a page of notes on what he wanted to say after the game. And PSG are just such a vertical threat, and that's how they kind of unlocked this Barcelona side. Just Barcola, Mbappe, and Dembele front three. That's just a deadly front three in terms of just athletes, not only as footballers. And that's how they scored a majority of their goals, in the Champions League, is over the top, and you just can't compete as a defender there. So I was very impressed with Bradley Barcola. He got the assist to Dembele, who scored another goal against his former side. So he was a standout. And then Vitinha, one of the better midfielders, in form wise right now in the world, he scores a nice goal off a set piece. And from there, it was only Mbappe who was going to score the final 2. Love the celebration, jumping over, celebrating with the fans and everything like that. And Mbappe and PSG have punched their ticket in for the semifinals, and they will be playing Dortmund. So probably the easier tie there. And they could definitely see themselves in the final, against a Bayern or Real Madrid. And this could be, a great farewell tour for Mbappe as he leaves PSG to go to Real Madrid.
Right. I think Mbappe and PSG is the best sprinting team in the world. Right. And I think Real Madrid is second to that, where you're talking about just absolute dynamic, blazing pace. Right. I enjoy that. And only some teams can pull that off. And I think PSG is that. And I think that matchup in that next round really favors them. I'll be honest, just because of that pace, because of the ability to sprint. And I think it's one of those. Wouldn't it be special if it was PSG versus Madrid there in that final?
Yeah, Mbappe with his current team versus his former team. I'm sure there would be some bad blood in the locker room when he arrives at that big money signing. But you mentioned Real Madrid. Real Madrid, somehow, some way, there's just some voodoo magic. I don't know how they get it done, but they were absolutely dominated against Manchester City, but still managed to win in PKs. I mean, we saw everything in this match. And I thought they started the match well. I would say first 15 to 20 minutes was almost all Real Madrid. But I would say after the 20-minute mark, like a snake, I feel like Manchester City just kind of slowly gained their grip on the match. And at the end of normal time, I don't think Real Madrid completed 3 passes in a row. It was that bad. So Kevin De Bruyne was able to level it after an early goal by Madrid, and then missed an absolute sitter to put this match to bed right before 90. And Real Madrid prevail in PKs, which was one of the worst PK shootouts I think I've ever seen.
I just want to say I've enjoyed this podcast now for 20 minutes. I've really enjoyed talking about these matches, but I've been really waiting to talk about these two matches. So I'm glad that we're here in this moment right now. And the first thing I'll say is that, I mean, Manchester City, just an absolute choke job. There's nothing else to say. There's no other to put it. This is the best team in the world. It's the best roster in the world. Erling Haaland, the goal merchant that he is, Phil Foden, the luckiest player in the Premier League. And I say that when I say lucky, what I mean by that is like he just gets to kind of roam and play unmarked in a lot of situations, right on top of the 18-yard box, and he finds himself with that left foot in really nice shooting positions a lot because of all the great players surrounding him. The embarrassment of riches that Manchester City has. When you take a look at this loss and you only think about scoring one goal at home, and yeah, you're right. There's a ton of chances, ton of opportunities, but I think the biggest indictment of Manchester City is the commentator on this match. Forgive me, I don't know who it was, but he said something. The analyst said something I found to be very interesting. When Real Madrid in the second half felt like they were, had a chance to go ahead and actually pull this upset. And the commentator said, well, as an opposing player at the Etihad, it's not an uncomfortable environment. It's somewhere that you can go and you can relax and you can play your best football. And I thought to myself, man, that was a really serious dig that he just threw at Manchester City and its supporters, that it was not a difficult place to play, that Real Madrid could settle in and play the type of soccer that they wanted to. And I think that kind of just like is a microcosm of this Manchester City project as a whole, right? Where it just feels to me just like a little bit empty, like a little bit bought and paid for. Like it's like a group of assassins, right? Where, yeah, they're the best players in the world and they're likely going to win the Premier League and continue to just build on that trophy case. But besides that, I just can't really wrap my mind around what they are actually building at Manchester City. Like when Pep Guardiola is gone, right? And the new manager ends up coming in, when all these players move on and age out, what is Manchester City building for the long run? I'm not really sure. And I think a comment like that about the lack of home field advantage in a Champions League quarterfinal, I start scratching my head. I go, that's very strange to me, considering how much success this team has had. Danny, what do you think it is? Do you think it's just the fact that supporters get just a little bit spoiled, that after you win so much and an occasion like that doesn't mean as much as it used to?
As a spoiled brat with my team, I would say yes, it does. When those losses come, they can be a bit of a surprise, especially with a team like Manchester City, who just feel like they never lose. I mean, Rodri lost his first game starting in like 65, 70 games. I mean, that is an absurd stat. Like, that was his first loss in 70 consecutive appearances. That just shows the level that Manchester City at. And one of the biggest jokes towards Manchester City fans, they call it the empty had. The empty had, because it's a plastic club. At the end of the day, it is. I mean, sometimes the fans show up, but the bigger club in Manchester is Manchester United, who's obviously struggling right now. But I mean, this club was bought and paid for in 2008. They just pumped money into it, and a guy, I don't know if you like him, Mark Goldbridge, he's been talking about this a lot, just about like, and then you have obviously the FFP charges that will come out maybe at some point. So who knows? But yeah, I just don't really, it's just a shame, because it feels like there's no heart and soul with City. And like, obviously having Foden as an academy kid definitely helps, but you had another academy kid in Cole Palmer and you shipped him off to sign $75 million players who haven't really even panned out. So it's like, I feel like if Pep Guardiola built more of like an English team, more of like through academies, but they just seem to ship off all the academy kids to, gain that 100% profit so they can go and spend more. So I feel like, these players are playing for trophies and they're playing for Pep Guardiola. They are not playing for the badge on the kit at the end of the day.
One other thing I wanted to say about this match was that Rudiger did just a fantastic job in this match. I thought he was brilliant at the center back position. I always enjoy watching him play. He's obviously super talented. He's obviously super experienced. And when he saw Erling Haaland across the pitch and in his box, he wasn't afraid. You know, he didn't kind of fall under the spell of like, oh, this guy's a god, and I can't defend him. No, Rudiger stepped up to that challenge and he played unbelievably well. And I think he's a true leader in a football club, and I think there's no doubt that Real Madrid is really, really lucky to have him.
Yeah, ex-Chelsea legend, of course. But yeah, no, I mean he's got everything, and he buried his PK as well. But he's got the athleticism, he's got the height, he's got the confidence.
Oh yeah, good point. By the way, he made the winning PK off the inside of the post at the end of the match too. Not a bad move for a center back.
No, both Madrid center backs actually took PKs and buried them. You can't really say the same for legend Luka Modric, Kovacic, Bernardo Silva, with arguably the worst penalty I've ever seen. But I wanted to pose a question to you. I was talking about this on the betting show that me and Harrison dropped last night, so go check that out. But when Ederson went to take that penalty, I was thinking there should be a rule where if a goalkeeper takes it, the other goalkeeper should have to take it too. I was like, get Lunin out there. I want to see it. So I don't know, that could be like a fun little wrinkle in like a smaller league, but I would love to see if you have elect a goalkeeper to take a penalty, the other one has to as well. I don't know.
I mean, I get it, like why Ederson is selected there. He's clearly good at taking PKs, and he knocked it right into the back of the net. But when he did step up to the spot, I was like, really? Like this Manchester City squad that is absolutely loaded with outfield players in the biggest moment of the season, the goalkeeper is the one that's actually taking this PK. That blew my mind, honestly did. Knowing that he's taken PKs in the past, it still did blow my mind, just based on everything that we discussed about the quality of this squad. And it's probably going to impact the race. This loss will impact the race for the Premier League for sure, in that now Manchester City is not thinking about Champions League. So I think there's an FA Cup final on Saturday.
Semifinal.
Thank you. Semifinal on Saturday. So they're still dealing with the FA Cup as well. But if you're Arsenal, if you're Liverpool, and now Manchester City is out of the Champions League, you go, really wish they would have moved on to the semifinal.
Could not agree more. Arsenal also, crashed out, which we'll get to in a second. But, now they have the full focus to Premier League. So maybe it's not completely over yet, just based off that. But, Manchester City does have to play the FA Cup semifinals. So that they had to play Chelsea. So you never know what Chelsea you're going to get. And they did play 120 minutes. So
right.
You don't know how tired those legs are, but it'll be interesting to see if they, set their full focus on the Premier League, don't really care about the FA Cup too much, and just try to win their fourth trophy in a row. But we mentioned Arsenal. Let's get to that game. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy talking about this a lot as a Spurs fan, but at the Allianz Arena, 1-1 in the draw, I saw at least an Arsenal that was scared. And it was, we texted about this beforehand. You told me that you like Bayern a lot in this match. I agreed, as veteran experience, usually in these kind of scenarios, trump the young bucks, if you will. And that's what we saw on the pitch. I mean, Bayern won a Champions League within the last 3-4 years, and they showed their experience today.
Right. And I want to go back to my commentary on Dortmund, right, where this is a moment, despite, and both Bundesliga teams, right, did this. Bayern Leverkusen wins the title this year, shocks the world, really, shocks Harry Kane. But if you would ask me months ago when Harry Kane signed with Bayern and said, like, what actually matters to this player, and it would be the Champions League. So yesterday was the moment, despite everything that's happened domestically in Germany this year and the disappointment there for Bayern, heading into this match on Wednesday, and considering Arsenal was limping in, after just an inexplicable loss over the weekend. And for me, it was like Bayern has a chance to keep a clean sheet. I mean, this was a professional win, right? And I think I'll underscore Harry Kane as that, if not anything else. And he's a lot of different things to a lot of different people, Harry Kane is. But one thing that he is the ultimate professional. And this to me, and Thomas Tuchel is the ultimate professional as well, as far as, managing a squad. He's a Champions League winner with Chelsea. This was an opportunity for Bayern to just honestly roll their best 11 out there, to play in a very professional way, led by a professional striker, led by a professional manager, with some young players sprinkled in, of course, with some other very good players sprinkled in, of course, but with Eric Dyer playing center back, for crying out loud, which is absolutely insane that Eric Dyer, who could not get into Ange Postecoglou's squad this year at Tottenham, has found himself as a starter on a Champions League team who's made the semifinal, right? So you put all those things together. I've always liked Leroy Sané. I love him. We talked about pace. Musiala as well, one of those young players that played fantastic here. And Harry Kane, for me, is somebody that is truly leading a line in a way. Yeah, he doesn't score, but he's the tip of the spear when this team goes up to battle, especially at home. And it was really impressive to see what Bayern did professionally, and I did expect them to do that, and was happy to see. Listen, and when it comes to the Arsenal Spurs rivalry, right? Now, for me, I typically don't root against other Premier League teams. So, simply just because I'm just kind of, I'm sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm not living in North London right now. I'm not sitting on White Hart Lane with other family members. It's really not that close to home for me. So I just try to keep an unbiased view of the Premier League just because I enjoy the league so much. I just happen to support Spurs because I like their style of football, and there's just many other reasons as well. But specifically when it comes to this Arsenal team, is that you cannot limp into a Champions League second leg quarterfinal at Bayern at baseline. You just can't limp into a match like that, and Arsenal did, and it showed.
Yeah, I feel like Arteta's game plan, he just didn't want to. He was more scared to make a mistake than to go out and just go for the match. And he's a young, promising manager, and he doesn't have much experience, in terms of the Champions League. But this is a big failure for them, especially with one of the weaker sides that Bayern have, rolled out in recent memory. So I was very disappointed with kind of how Arteta and his men kind of performed their game plan. But you also mentioned Harry Kane, and obviously for Saliba and Gabriel, he was top of mind at all times. And I feel like because Harry Kane has a reputation, that's why Kimmich, who's been, had a pretty terrible season, came in big and was able to fly in on the 6-yard box and head that home.
What a sweet goal.
It was when Raya kind of parried that outside. First of all, Ben White didn't really gave Rafael Guerrero all the time in the world to cross it in. But when it came to crossing the ball, those two defenders looked at Harry Kane and completely left the space behind him wide open for a veteran like Kimmich to go in, take it. All right, you're going to give me the space. I'm going to go ahead and score this winner here and move on. So disappointed with Arsenal and kind of how they performed. And I know they are a young squad, so this will be a learning moment. But how I look at it, Bayern have absolutely owned them over the past 7 years. I think the last time they played at Allianz, it was like 6-0. It was one of the most disgusting performances I still remember to this day. But yeah, and when it comes to, I've seen a lot of discourse over the last 24 hours regarding the Premier League, and I wanted to ask you, there's no Premier League teams left in the Champions League. There probably will not be one later today in the Europa League. And then whatever can happen in the Europa Conference League with Aston Villa. Why are English Premier League teams struggling so much in Europe? Do you think it's because of the strength of the league, or do you think that's just a cop-out answer?
I think this conversation kind of falls into the conversation that is, which conference in college football is the best conference. You kind of look at a few results and you make a sweeping judgment about how, why the ACC sucks this season and the Big Ten is having a great year. For me, in soccer, this to me means absolutely nothing, right? It just doesn't, because these are one-off results. that happen towards the end of the season and in massive games against the best clubs in the world. The Premier League is by far and away the best league in the world. There's no doubt about that. And despite Manchester City losing, despite Arsenal losing, despite Liverpool being down 3-0 going into the second leg against Atalanta, right? These games are one-off competitive matches across Europe. And when you put all these teams together, anything could happen. So I don't really see this as an indictment on any league. Actually, I hate speaking about leagues as far as this league being better than the other. I really don't care. It's a club sport. And, for me, it's an indictment on Manchester City that they couldn't win at home, score more than one goal. It's an indictment on Arsenal that they've gone now 180 minutes without scoring a goal in the two biggest matches of the season. And it's an indictment on Liverpool that you get your ass kicked 3-0 at home against Atalanta, right? So it's not an indictment on the Premier League at all. I think the Premier League is super strong and as deep as it gets. And it's probably an indictment on the managers and of those three squads as well, because top managers can look good for 8 months out of the year. But if you don't look good in the right month of the year, people will start asking questions.
No, absolutely. I think you phrased that perfectly, and I completely agree. And I'm sure all three of those managers want those one or at least two legs back and what could have been for them in their clubs. But John, I've had a great time talking some UCL ball with you.
Yeah, me too. That was fantastic. Enjoyed it.
It was. We do have some Europa League and Europa Conference League starting off in just a minute. So if you're listening, this has probably already happened, but we're going to go in and get to some weekend predictions here, as there are some absolute fire games coming up on the docket here. And we're going to go ahead and start with probably the biggest of the weekend, El Clasico, Real Madrid versus Barcelona. Real Madrid has, I think, a 6 or 7 point lead in terms of the La Liga race, maybe 8 now that I'm thinking about it. But they did just play 120 minutes in a dramatic penalty shootout win. Do you think Barcelona are going to be able to capitalize on that after a tough loss? Or do you think Real Madrid is going to still reign supreme and basically win the title with this game?
It's a tough question, right? And the fact that both teams played and one of the teams went through and the other didn't, I think creates a really interesting mental battle heading into this match. And first of all, I always enjoy how El Clasico is like gonna wrap up the weekend. I guess, are we gonna be watching that match at Hot Fly?
I would hope so. It's at 3:00.
Yeah, we'll be watching that match at Hot Fly pregame before the Charlotte FC and Minnesota match, which is pretty sweet. 3:00 Eastern time. So I mean, for me, right, Real Madrid is a team that's on a high. It's a team that just went into City and advanced into the Champions League semifinal. And Barcelona is a team that obviously feels down, feels disappointed. So it's all about mentality for me, truthfully. How high has Real Madrid gotten at this point, right? Because after that match, you're talking about just a few days until El Clasico. Can Barcelona pick itself up off the floor? Does Barcelona kind of see this match as an opportunity to right the wrong that was losing at home and in an embarrassing way, considering the red card earlier in the match that we talked about and the red card that ruined the game, quite frankly. And for me, I have a feeling. I do have a feeling that Barcelona is going to kind of step up. Maybe not win the match. I kind of see this one as a draw, but I do like the idea of Barcelona going on the road and figuring out a way to maybe get a point here. But that doesn't go far enough for their hopes to win the title in that league.
Any score predictions?
I would say 2-2. I think 2-2 would be a really nice score in El Clasico. Be a nice one for the neutral too.
I'd have to agree here. I think Barcelona off a loss will come back firing. I think Real Madrid are going to have no choice but to rotate a little bit, and Barcelona should capitalize on that, even though it's at the Bernabeu. So this is Xavi's last El Clasico game as well. So Xavi,
that's something that's important too.
Yeah, it's definitely important, as he played for Barcelona for his entire career almost. So I think Xavi's going to be really fired up in this match. We'll see if he gets another red card in this match as well. I could see him, being.
Well, he won't get a red card in this match because I'm telling you, he's a smart manager, right? He knew exactly what he was doing in that match. He's like, we're out of the Champions League. If I get a red card, it doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. So I'm gonna act like a fool and show my emotion and endear myself to the fans and let the fans know I'm pissed off too. And that was the right move by a manager. I really like that move. But in this match, no, he's not getting a red card in this match. He's coaching this one to win.
Yeah, and Ancelotti versus Xavi. What a good matchup that's going to be. Now we have a Bundesliga action here, 6th place for 7th place, fighting for that Europa Conference League spot. Frankfurt versus Augsburg. I know a lot of people probably don't watch these two teams. You're going to focus on Bayer Leverkusen, Bayern, Dortmund, Leipzig, and teams like that. But Augsburg have been a nice surprise this season, and so have Frankfurt. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on Frankfurt is at home. Who you're going to back in this match?
Okay, so this is where you're just kind of I'm closing my eyes and I'm throwing darts at the board because I promise you, I am not following the race for the Conference League in the Bundesliga. So what I'll say is I hope both teams play well, and I hope the neutral gets a lot of goals, and it's an exciting match because I am in no way, shape, or form qualified to predict this match. But I would sit down and watch it for sure.
That's fair enough. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw here. In the Premier League, Luton versus Brentford. Luton at home need a win badly. They do win at home at times, and they can usually get a result here.
Now you're in my wheelhouse. Now you're in my wheelhouse, by the way, a little relegation battle in the Prem.
Gotta love it. What do you think is going to happen?
I love Luton Town because I think they're one of the more physical teams in honestly in global football. Like I think if you rolled them out and their style of play against anybody, like they can kind of body you around. And I really appreciate that style of play. Obviously that kind of style really does well in the championship. And that's why they were able to kind of get up and get promoted. And it hasn't really been the same for Luton in the Premier League, just because there's some bigger guys and obviously just physicality doesn't get you the results in the Premier League. You need world-class skill, but I like Luton in this match. I do. I think Brentford has been playing poorly over the last couple months, and I think this sets up beautifully for Luton to get a crucial 3 points at the end of the season.
Yeah, the home atmosphere in that tight little stadium that they have around the houses is going to be absolutely rocking. I think we'll get a draw here, but I think Luton will take a lead at some point or another, and it's really going to be about if they can hang on. They haven't been able to hang on in many games, but when you have a player like Ross Barkley in the middle of the park, Carlton Morris up top, who's had a pretty good season. I'm hoping that they can keep it tight enough at the back, play bully ball, like you say, and get 3 points here and really make the relegation race interesting between Everton and Forest, which we're going to get to next. This is a 6-pointer. They are right in front of Luton. So a ton of relegation, battles going on this weekend. And are you going to back Everton off a 6-0 loss with Sean Dyche as the manager or Nuno?
This is a game that I honestly don't really even want to watch.
It's going to be
maybe
horrendous.
It just kind of falls in that window of this one might be ugly. There's another match on at the same time, right? So it's hey, is the Luton match at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern time?
I believe so.
No, that's a Sunday match. Let's see, that match is on a Sunday. Yes, Everton Forest is the 8:30 a.m. Sunday. So it's do I want to on Sunday morning, right? It's Charlotte FC match day. I'm excited for the day. I love getting up on MLS match day and watching some Prem in the morning. So yeah, I probably will catch some of this because it's the only game on at the moment. But I am expecting just your classic. This is what Everton as a club has turned into, right? It probably will be a good atmosphere at Goodison Park, but the question I'll ask is, are we really doing this again?
I feel like every single Everton fan really asks themselves that every single year, especially Roger Bennett on the Men in Blazers show. I mean, I love his content.
Yeah, but it hasn't been this way. The relegation stuff, it wasn't like this for a long time where they're just battling relegation year in and year out and celebrating the fact that they're staying up, right? So at some point, a club like Everton, I don't know. If they do manage to stay up this season, let's not celebrate. Let's just kind of take it for what it is and stay up in the Prem. There's no reason to rush the field. There's no reason to have a huge celebration. You're Everton. You got Town on your squad. You shouldn't be fucking around with Luton Town at 18th place in the table. You just shouldn't be doing that. Despite the points reduction, right? Obviously, that's a huge part of this. The points reduction plays into it, but which almost feels like a cruel joke. It's the Premier League was well, the storylines are pretty good. Everton, when they're battling relegation, why don't we just send them back down there and make the league intriguing?
No, absolutely. And I mean, Goodison Park's a tough place to play. I think that Everton, especially with the 6-0 loss, I think Sean Dyche, knowing the character that he is,
I've got Forest. I've got Forest.
you
I'm on
got
the other
Forest.
side. Yes,
You
I'm on
got
the other side.
Forest.
I
I'm
heard you building up to Everton. Are you taking Everton in a win?
I'm taking a draw here just because
Oh,
I would like to be a fly in the wall in that locker room after that 6-0 defeat to see what was said. I'm sure it was very bad. But Forest are actually a surprisingly good side, so they're a fun side to watch. It. That's what I mean. They're
yeah.
not a
Man,
good side
I
to watch.
like Morgan Gibbs White. I think he's a player
Alenga,
that I really like enjoying. I think Chris Wood is one of those Premier League strikers that is. We talked about Harry Kane being professional, right? Chris Wood is nowhere near Harry Kane as far as skill is concerned, world class skill is concerned, but he can play striker on Nottingham Forest in a way that really works in the Premier League, and he has the ability and experience to do it. I could see him with a brace against Everton for sure.
yeah, he's since Nuno came in, he's been playing his best football as well. So I'm gonna say a 1-1 draw here. Just Everton should clean it up at the back a little bit and make themselves very hard to break down with the likes of Chris Wood, Morgan White, Alenga, Callum
I've got a Chris.
Hudson-Odoi.
I've got a Chris Wood brace. Mark it down. I've got a Chris
Mark it
Wood brace.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'd like to see some more minutes from Gio Reyna. Got the start last game. We'll see if he continues. But I probably don't see it as Everton are a more physical team, and I don't think Nuno's going to trust Reyna out there to get it done. But the last Premier League game I wanted to cover was Fulham versus Liverpool. Liverpool has been playing dreadful. They play later today. Fulham is a weird side. They're kind of hot and cold, and they've actually given. This is the third time we're playing them this season, and they've kind of got our number a little bit. Do you think Fulham are going to be able to get it done at the Craven Cottage?
Oh man, this is a tough one, and again, I'll play it down the middle for you. I know that you're a Liverpool supporter. I know that things have really not been going well with Liverpool at the moment, and I do think that trend continues. I do. I think that sometimes I'll use a boxing analogy, right, where Liverpool's kind of just been punched in the face recently, and their legs are wobbling for sure. And if this game was at Liverpool, I would say, you know what, they're going to make it to the next round, and they're going to keep their Premier League title hopes alive. But I think this is a really good opportunity for Liverpool to go to West London, to go to Craven Cottage, and hit the floor and get knocked out, and for the season to be over. And it feels like that could happen. And maybe because of that reality, Liverpool kind of looks in the mirror and says, let's fucking put some nice passages of play together. Let's score some goals and keep this thing going. But ultimately, it's a really good opportunity for a Fulham squad that plays well at home to have its biggest win of the season.
Yeah, I'd probably agree here with Fulham. It really depends on how the Europa League match goes. If we see a different Liverpool team on Thursday, I could see that kind of carrying into Sunday. But if Liverpool roll over in the Europa League, they're sure as hell going to roll over to Fulham here. So I'm going to say a 2-2 draw here. Got a lot of draws on the docket today, unfortunately, but I just think that this Fulham side has enough quality to break us down, and how we've been finishing as of late doesn't make me feel too warm and fuzzy. Now we do have a really good FA Cup match with Chelsea versus City in the FA Cup. Are you gonna be on Matt Gaslin's side here on Chelsea's side, or are we gonna back Manchester City here?
Well, your esteemed co-host Matt Geslin, always enjoy his work on the show. I don't understand the question though, because isn't Chelsea and City both of his sides?
Oh, that feels that way at sometimes, especially in our group message. I mean, I think he just likes the villain arc against anti-Arsenal and Liverpool, but he might be anti every single team in the Premier League other than Chelsea and City. It could be. We need to have a dialogue about it.
It's a really fun match, right? For a couple of different reasons. I like these matches when they end up at Wembley. I think Wembley matches are some of the best theater in world football. So I'm just going to enjoy the location to begin with, and I think it has a chance to be pretty open because I'm not sure Manchester City really gives a shit. And I think it's really difficult for them to get up for this game. So I think that they could concede for sure. And if they do concede, the game could really open up. So what I would expect is a really fun watch for the neutral. I think this game means a lot to Mauricio Pochettino in his first season, And I think that it's Chelsea's last opportunity, right, to win silverware this year. Already disappointment at Wembley in the energy drink final. So all of a sudden, to me, I think Chelsea's got a chance here. I think if Chelsea can score two, they've got a chance to get to extra time. If they can score three, they win.
Yeah, I'm gonna back the other side here. I think Pep Guardiola does not like losing, and even though he probably, I agree, doesn't give a shit about the FA Cup, even with a rotated lineup, I think City are still miles better.
Well, I think Pep cares. I think Pep cares. I'm just not sure the players are going to be like, okay, now let's get up for the FA Cup semifinal.
True, but the treble's dead, but the double's still alive. So I feel like all those players are at that club, like I mentioned, for silverware anyway. So they're gonna like grab the opportunity whenever they can. And so
There's one
Chelsea
player
do.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's one
No,
player
you're
I
good.
want on the pitch in this match. He started this past weekend for City. If I was Pep, I'd play him against Jack Grealish. I think if Jack Grealish starts for City, then I think that City's in a much better position to win this match. If Grealish does not start, I would start the English guys. I would put Foden out there as well. I think being that it's the English FA Cup, you got to find an angle. You got to find the English players that really actually can look at the FA Cup and say this means something to me.
And that's why you have Anya on the show. I mean, that insight there, didn't even think about that. Kids grow up thinking about dreaming of playing at Wembley for the FA Cup final and things of that nature. So that's a really good point that you make there. I would like to see Doku as well. I thought Doku came on and almost changed the game against
Totally.
Real Madrid. So I think he'll get the start as well. It'll just be depending if Julian Alvarez starts up top or Erling Haaland. But I'm still going to back City to win here. And then the second to last game, Dortmund versus Bayer Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen obviously just won the title. I know you don't love the Bundesliga, or you're not an often watcher, but this is a big game here. Dortmund, played and won their match in the Champions League. Bayer Leverkusen plays today, a tough game against West Ham. Do you think Bayer Leverkusen, now that they've clinched it, aren't really going to care about this match very much? And Dortmund are playing for third, fourth spot here.
Right. They're playing for a Champions League place. But based on the coefficient, though, actually, this is kind of interesting. The fact that Bayern and Dortmund have both made the Champions League semifinal might mean that a 15 from the Bundesliga gets into the Champions League next season.
Yep.
So despite that, right, you still want to play and win. I think it's going to be Dortmund's going to have to step up and play another really nice game this time on the road. I think they've got a chance to win. It means more to them for sure at this point. So I'm going to take Dortmund to win this
at
one.
home too.
Yes, that's huge. That's huge.
The only reason I'm not going to back Dortmund here is because I just simply cannot believe that they can put two really good performances consecutively. So I'm going to go with another draw here. I'm going to go 3-3 the draw. I think this is going to be a really fun match on Saturday, I believe. And we should be a great match for the neutral. And then the last game, of course, got to get the Charlotte FC discourse in here. Charlotte FC plays Minnesota at 6:00 on Sunday. You and I will both be in attendance. Are you feeling good about this match?
I mean, it's hard not to be feeling good about this match. Charlotte's coming off of a 3-2 win. It feels like the dam has finally broken as far as getting goals into the back of the net. You got an extra day off this week. The players are feeling good. They've been hanging out at their homes here in Charlotte. The travel for the first month and a half of the season has been really difficult, and it feels like the club has really found its footing. I think the one difficult thing is the fact that we've been talking Premier League, right? We've been talking about strikers. We've been talking about players that can potentially make an impact. And in the MLS, as a classy striker can really make an impact. And there's somebody that happens to play for Minnesota by the name of Teemu Pukki, who has Premier League experience. Somebody that I was a huge fan of.
Norwich legend.
Yes, absolutely. And when you inject a player like that into a match, considering Charlotte FC's strikers are Enzo Capetti, who still hasn't scored a goal yet this year, and Patrick Ajamong, a 23-year-old player on 75K. Teemu Pukki is just in a different league. So if he's feeling like he wants to score a brace on Sunday, I think potentially he could. If Adilson Milana is out, we'll see what happens there. But I think it's a really fascinating, fun. It's a great MLS matchup. Like seriously, I'm excited for this on Sunday. What about yourself?
I think it will be goals for sure. I'm feeling a Charlotte FC win. Even with Melanda probably going to miss out, like you mentioned, but I think especially if we start Pat Ajiman here, I think he'll score another goal, and then Abada, he put one in the back of the net. He should have had two last week. I think he's going to really show that he's a class above in this league, and we got ourselves a player that finally is one of, in the top tier of players in the MLS, and he's going to show that every single week.
Scotty Arfield's due for a goal too. Dean Smith keeps starting him at the number 10 position, and I thought bring Breck Diagra off the bench late in the match probably is his move again. Why change that up after it worked last Saturday? So maybe Scotty Arfield's due for a goal here in that starting position. But you'd have to consider, I mean, I'm going to ask Danny Higginbottom about this here in a couple hours on our pre-match show. Is the Enzo Capetti Patrick Ajman conversation is not going away.
No.
And I don't know who you start up top. Who would you start?
I'm starting Pat. I mean, he keeps scoring goals. He came off the bench, scored another one. The Enzo Capetti assist was a fluke. I mean, if you're Dean, you probably want to lean towards Capetti here, but I'm playing the hot hand at all times, and Pat is finding the net, and Capetti's not. So I'm starting him. Breck came off the bench and got an immediate assist to Pat. I'm probably going to start Brecht here as well and see if he can put another good full, probably not 90, but another 60 to 70 minute display in. And then you throw Scotty Arfield on with tired legs and see if he can make an impact. So that's kind of how I'm leaning here.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think the only thing I would be disagreeable about is I could see Dean Smith saying, well, bringing Ajamong and Brecht off the bench really helped us. So let me just do that again.
Yeah.
And go with the same starters at the 9 and the 10 and know that he's got some clips in the chamber to bring in the second half if he needs them. Just thinking about Enzo Capetti coming off the bench in the second half, maybe like Capetti is kind of like turning into like a workhorse 9 who can play minutes and just eat up space. And then Pat comes in and actually scores a goal. It's a weird situation for sure. But I think Charlotte ends up with a 2-1 win on Sunday.
I'm thinking another 3-2 win here at the bank on a nice Sunday. Hopefully the weather turns sunny instead of raining. But John, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. I will see you on Sunday at Hotfly, and thank you so much for taking your lunch to talk some footy.
I've enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been a great time talking European soccer. It's such a pleasure. One of my favorite things about European soccer is waking up on the weekend, making a cup of coffee, having breakfast, sitting down, watching the matches. I'll say that European soccer for me has taken on I have this whole new perspective on it now that I follow MLS so closely, right? Where I head into the weekend and I feel like, the Premier League and specifically in the championship, English championship as well, is something that really sets the table for me, right? Where gets my weekend going, and then Charlotte FC and MLS in the evening. I mean, for a soccer fan in the United States right now, in a city like Charlotte, a soccer city like Charlotte, it doesn't get much better than this. And now all of a sudden you've got the Copa America this summer, and you've got these massive games as well, the big clubs coming to the United States after the season is over. It's just such a great time to be a soccer fan in the U.S., and it's only going to get better considering the World Cup's going to be here in just a few years.
Could not agree more. We're going to end on that note. So thank you again, John, and we will be back on Sunday.